Hey there drone fans, Rick here again from Drone Valley. In today's clip, I'd like to show you a brand new accessory for your DJI smart controller that can really help to increase your signal strength. Now think about that for a second. Having a stronger signal not only means you can fly a little bit further reliably, but more importantly, it's going to guarantee a better connection between your controller and your quad when you're flying in noisy environments with Wi-Fi interference, or maybe you're flying around buildings and trees, and both of those tend to knock down your signal strength. So having a pair of these slipped over your antenna gives you just the extra boost you need to overcome those obstacles. Now the product's called a Parabolic range extender, and I've done clips before reviewing these products, and I've done a couple of clips actually doing testing of these products, showing you with an EMF meter, which is a way of measuring RF power, how the antenna can produce a certain amount of RF power by itself, and then once you slide these over, showing you the increase they provide for you. So they work really well, and I know there's a lot of naysayers out there on the internet that are talking about how they don't work and they've done their own testing. Well, I'm here to tell you as an engineer, I've done the testing and they work. And it's not just me saying that, they're backed by a very solid physics principle known as the parabolic effect. And that goes way back to the time of Archimedes. And a lot of modern gear actually rely on the fact that the parabolic effect is something that works. So for example, if you've ever turned on a flashlight, that parabolic reflector behind the bulb helps to send all that extra light downfield. They're used on radar dishes, or if you've got a direct TV dish on your roof, it's the exact same thing that is happening here with these reflectors. They're using acoustic equipment all the time. And essentially what they're doing is you've got this sort of half circle. You remember from geometry, it's called a parabola. You've got that half circle on the back and the metal inside. And essentially what they're doing is taking the signal from the antennas, because your controllers on the antennas will generate a 360-degree radiation pattern. So it's broadcasting RF energy in all those directions simultaneously. And that's great if the quad's in front of you, but it's wasting a lot of energy directing signal this direction. So what this guy does is slide over top of it and takes all that wasted signal that would be coming back to you, which does nothing to help you with the quad, redirects it downfield towards the quad. And it's a passive device. It doesn't require any energy or anything like that. It's just there to reflect all the signal that's coming this direction back downfield. Now that does two things for you. Number one, it increases the amount of signal that's heading downfield towards your quad, but it also decreases the amount of signal coming back to you. And I'm not a physician. I don't know if there's any studies out there, but I'm not crazy about having all that stray radiation coming back towards me. So I like the fact that these take everything that would be coming back to me, at least the vast majority of it, and redirect it downfield. And I've used them pretty much every time I fly. I like them an awful lot, but what I find the biggest value in these is when I'm flying in close quarters. So a lot of the filming I do is around buildings or trees or out in the woods, and that tends to be a problem because if you duck behind a tree for a second, your signal can drop, and then maybe you have problems with connection. You know, I got to get back out from behind the tree to reconnect. So having these on, I find that connection in the background is a lot more reliable when I'm flying in those environments, or if I'm flying someplace where I've got a lot of Wi-Fi noise. Wi-Fi noise is dangerous because you're broadcasting on the Wi-Fi frequency here, the ISM band, and if you're in an environment where there's a lot of Wi-Fi connections or a lot of stray radiation, it's almost like being at a crowded dinner party and trying to hear somebody in a conversation next to you because all that other background noise is so loud that it's hard to actually hear what's going on. That's exactly what happens. So when you have a flyway condition, I've never had one, but if you've had one, it typically happens where you're flying near a signal that's stronger than the signal between this and the quad, and it sort of confuses the quad. So having these on, for me, it's a peace of mind of knowing I've done everything I can to redirect that signal, not amplify it, but redirect that signal downfield towards the quad. Now, there are other options as well you can look at. I know there are companies out there that make these active signal enhancers that actually you have to take the controller apart and wire it in. And I used to use those on my Phantom 4 products. I tested a bunch of different models of those out there. But what worries me about that is the minute you crack open the case of this, you void your warranty. Plus, you're not really supposed to be doing that because the FCC, which is the governing body of what radio frequencies you can use and how powerful they have to be, not only take the power of the transmitter into account, but they also take the amplification factor of the antenna. So when DJI certified this controller, they had to test it with the antennas on, and the combination of the RF transmitter and the antennas, that aggregate number is what they've been certified for. So the minute you stick bigger antennas on, or heaven forbid, some kind of powered amplifier, you're technically breaking the law with the FCC. Plus you can cause problems with your quad. So these are easy to use, they're inexpensive, they slide right over the antennas. My experience has shown that with these, I get between, depending on where I'm flying, 25 to 50% better signal strength across all the bands, because the other thing you have to be aware of is this is going to frequency hop. So it's using OcuSync 2 technology, which means it's going to look at both sections of the ISM band and constantly be monitoring all the frequencies in there that it can transmit on. finding the best one for transmission. And if you fly behind something or something gets noisy and that frequency's been challenged by somebody else that's louder, it's going to switch to another frequency. The challenge is some of them that are on the market today are very finely tuned for either the high end or the low end of that band. And that can be a problem because if that's the noisy section of the band, they're not going to work for you. The sets we use, the ones that I've tested, this set here is a broad spectrum amplifier, which means a redirector, which means it's going to look at all the ISM frequencies and it doesn't have a favorite. It's going to treat them all the same. So it's a great way to go. It's simple. There's nothing you have to worry about as far as tuning. You basically just take it and slide it over the, oops, I'm going to put it on backwards here because there's another thing you got to be aware of. In the old days, you would hold it up like this and fly with it. And this new smart controller, they want it below because you want to make sure the flat side is facing your quad. So if you fold them up like this, you've always got to keep it up and then you can't really see the display. So with me, I hold it down like this to see the display and the antennas go down. So with these, you want to put it on the bottom. Now I'm going to take you outside in a minute and show you exactly what I mean of how you can use it with your quad. But essentially, you just slide them over like that and then they redirect the signal again downfield. And the nice part is it's keeping all that stray radiation from coming back to me in addition to helping me downfield. We also have them for other controllers as well. Here's the standard controllers from the Mavic 2 as well. These will work on the Spark or the Mavic Air or whichever quad you've got. I've got them for Phantom 4s as well. But essentially, it's the same exact type of scenario where it's taking that signal that's normally being broadcast back to you and sending it downfield. So both of these sets are great. They're easy to use. They're inexpensive. And for me, anything I can do to enhance the connection with my quad, because the only tether I have with that quad is the RF signal between this and the quad. And if that disappears, I know that it's going to return to home because it's a Mavic 2 and it's really smart, but heaven forbid it doesn't. So I want to have that strongest signal as possible when I'm making that flight out, to my end of visual line of sight. And the last thing I'll say, and I'll come back at the end and give you a couple of final thoughts, but the last thing I'll say before we go outside and show you how to use it is another concern people had was that because we're redirecting that signal, they were worried that it was like a laser-focused laser beam of signal that I had to keep this thing zeroed in on my quad. That's not all the case. They're designed to be a fairly wide field of view. So 140 degrees is about the field of view in these, which means you can pretty much be facing the general direction of the quad, and it's going to throw all that signal downstream. It's not going to actually focus it on a micro spot downfield where you have to worry about it. But let's get outside. I'll show you how you use them. Then I'll come back with some final thoughts. So stay tuned. When you're ready to use your deluxe range extenders, it's really important you get them installed on the antennas facing the right direction because you can actually put them on facing forward or facing backwards. You want to make sure the curves are to the back and you should be able to see the antenna from the front. So see how the antenna are visible? Because they operate on what's called the parabolic effect. They essentially take any wasted signal that would normally be coming back to you and redirect it through that parabolic effect downfield towards your quad. So essentially what you're getting is a stronger signal because all that wasted signal that would have been coming back towards you is now being sent downfield, and it does increase your signal strength considerably. The other advantage is it knocks down on that stray radiation coming back to you, and you can see where those antennas are pointing. It's not a good thing, so I think that's also a benefit. Now you do have a lot of flexibility in how you position the antennas, and I know if you haven't flown with the smart controller before, it seems weird to have the antenna facing downward, but you're broadcasting off the flat side of those antennas. So by redirecting that downfield, you're really increasing that signal strength. And if you're flying above you, you can actually flip it up to increase the signal above you. Now, a lot of people asked me last time we talked about these, how accurate are they? Are they like laser focused on my quad where I have to keep it aimed at the quad the whole time? No, you don't. They're about 140 degree field of view, which means as long as you're pointing in the general compass direction of your quad, you're going to be fine. Now, if you turn sideways, it is going to knock down the signal a little head in this direction because now it's facing that direction. But if you're really behaving and watching your visual line of sight like you're supposed to, you should be able to see your quad. And as long as you're facing it, you're fine. And even if you turn slightly to either side, you're going to be fine because it's going to do a good job of still directing that signal downfield. And remember, because it's an increased signal strength, you've got a lot more flexibility of how you move that antenna. So if I'm flying this guy, I'm going to sort of point him at the quad when I'm taking off. And then once I'm in the sky, I'm going to follow the quad around. And if I fly the quad over top, I'm going to point it straight up so I can increase that signal strength up to the quad above me. Now, if I fly behind me, I'm not going to just sort of put it over my shoulder. I'm going to spin around and make sure that I've got it on the quad as well. Pretty much the way you fly today is the way you're going to fly with these on. You're just going to notice a big increase in your signal strength. Now, if you're flying with the original controller, the standard controller, we have a set that fit that as well. And again, not to be confusing here, but these antennae flip up. So you want to put them on the same way where you can see the antenna and you're broadcasting downfield. And again, you've got a lot of control over how you're orienting those antennas. If you're flying like this where it's straight up and down, you can put it there. If you're a little bit, tilted like this, you can put it there. You can even pop them up a little bit further and put it up straight if you have to actually, increase it that direction. But there's a lot of flexibility. Same exact principle on both of these. Again, it's a parabolic effect, which goes back to the time of Archimedes. I mean, it's a well-proven effect that's used in flashlights and speaker systems and everything else. It's essentially taking whatever signal's being generated and focusing it in a beam downfield. Now, the challenge with some of these that are on the market today is that the curvature of this is really critical, because if it's too wide, you won't get that effect, or you'll spread it too far and it won't really make a difference. Or if they're too narrow, the curve is too tight, it'll focus it at too sharp a point, which will be a problem as well, because then you do have that sort of laser effect where you've got to keep it right on the quad. I like these because they've got sort of that happy middle ground between too tight and too wide. 140 degrees is pretty nice, and that just doesn't pose a hassle for you where you've got to keep track of exactly how close it has to be. Again, if you're just facing in the general cardinal direction of a compass, you're fine. So just face the quad, use these, and you're going to really see an improvement in your signal strength. I just had a couple of final thoughts that I wanted to mention. The first one has to do with orientation. Now, I know I just mentioned this a minute ago, but it's super important you get these installed on the antenna in the right direction, because they can go on one of two ways, and they do a really good job of redirecting signal downfield. So if you put these on backwards, that means your quad down there is going to be starved for signal, and everything's going to be coming back towards you. And I've actually seen clips on YouTube where guys were testing these, saying, hey, I'm not really seeing a big difference in signal quality, and that's because all the signal was coming back towards them because they had them on backwards. So just to be clear, when you're finished, the standard controller should look like this, where you see the two humps and the antenna are visible to the quad that's downfield. You want this end to be pointing towards your quad. I know it sounds simple, but I put them on backwards myself, and I've caught myself before I actually took off with the quad, because that would really restrict how far I could fly with it. So that's what the standard controller looks like when they're installed correctly. If you're flying with the smart controller, same thing. The only thing you have to keep in mind is you want to have the antennas, the open side of it, facing towards your quad, because those little parabolic reflectors are going to send everything downfield towards your quad. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing I'll mention is when you get these, they come with a protective film on them. So I'll show you real quick. So on the smart controller, I was just using this one this afternoon. So this one, I've peeled that off, but if you look closely at this one, it's a brand new one. There's a label in there that says, make sure you peel this thing off before you use it. Some people miss that, I don't know how, but there's a thin protective film on there to keep it from getting scratched. You want to peel that off. And it's not like it's going to make a big difference, but that little extra plastic has a bit of a Fresnel effect on some of the signals, and it scatters them a little bit, so you want to peel that stuff off. It takes 8 seconds to do it, and don't worry if you get them scratched, because it's not going to really affect the performance of them whatsoever. I've got a set that I've been using for 4 or 5 years. They're scratched up because they were thrown in a bag, but they work just as well. You're fine. The last thing I'll mention is we sell these on the website. Now, you can find them all over the internet, and you probably see them on eBay for a couple of bucks. I just want to warn you that the stuff we sell, we test, right? So anything you buy from me, we've got a full-time guarantee that we're going to take care of you if anything ever goes wrong with it. A lot of the products out there like these, the minute they're on the market, a bunch of companies start manufacturing clones of the product. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the clip, the way that parabolic reflector is shaped, the actual curvature of it, the depth of it, the material used behind it is super important to make sure that the signal in this frequency band is redirected downfield. If you get that curve off just a little bit, you've either got too narrow a field of view or too wide a field of view, or it's going to scatter the signal and not really help you at all. And that's a bad thing because you're wasting signal. So with ours, they work great. If you want to buy them from us, I've got links below where you can check out the website and you can go there and research the product and buy them from us. You'd be supporting the channel. I'm sure you can find them all over the internet. Just my word of caution is be careful where you buy them, because typically if it's that cheap, it's probably not going to work well for you. But anyway, that's pretty much it for today. So I hope this clip was helpful. Again, I like them. I use them. I'd recommend them. So if you don't use them today, you might want to give them a shot. They're a couple of bucks. They're not that bad. They're under $15. And I've got models that fit all of the Phantom quads out there, all of the Mavic quads out there. I've got a set for the Inspire. I don't have any if you're flying the Evo product or the Anafi product yet, but we're working on that. So maybe they'll be coming out real soon. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button down there. I've got a ton more clips coming on quads and accessories and other high-tech gear. I love talking about this stuff. So if you guys are enjoying the clips, there'll be a lot more stuff coming. The last thing I'll say is thank you again for all the support you've shown the channel. Our subscriber count's going up every week. We really are inspired by the fact that people are watching these clips and they're enjoying them. So thank you very much for being a subscriber and supporting the channel. And until next time, happy flying.